On today's edition of Locked On Eagles, I'm going to tell you why you should be even more confident in the Eagles beating the Rams than you were in them beating the Packers. All that and more coming your way on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Louie DiBiase joining you on this Wednesday edition of the podcast. We are brought to you by FanDuel. From the final whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. We now know the Philadelphia Eagles' second playoff opponent, the Los Angeles Rams, come to town for round two, both literally in the playoffs and also literally against the Philadelphia Eagles, as these two teams have played already in the 2024 season. The Eagles blew the Rams out on Sunday Night Football back in November. And although the Rams are a good football team that I respect, I think Matt Stafford is still one of the best quarterbacks in football. When it comes to who are the best quarterbacks in the NFC, I still think he's in that top tier with Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff. He is in tier one. You can make the case he's still top two, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't take him over Jalen Hurts right now, or I think I would take him over Jared Goff still. I would not take him over Jaden Daniels, but he's in that conversation for being a top-tier quarterback in this conference. Sean McVay, still one of the best quarterbacks, or I should say play callers and coaches for quarterbacks in the NFL. They have a very underrated, young, good defensive line. They've got weapons, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. This is a team that I actually, when I was watching that game against Minnesota, I was going back and forth with who I wanted to play. I would have preferred Minnesota. I thought they were frauds all year. I didn't think they were a Super Bowl contender that belonged in that conversation with the Eagles and the Lions. I think the last 2 weeks against the Lions and the Rams proved that to be true. I would have rather played Sam Darnold than Matt Stafford. But overall, I think the Eagles, no matter what, after the Commanders beat the Buccaneers, I was happy with whoever they drew in the divisional round. I don't think the Rams are that much different from Minnesota. I think they're pretty similar tier players. And I actually think the Packers were a better football team than both of those teams that the Eagles could have played in the second round. So I'm honestly more confident in this game than I was against Green Bay last week. The only thing that I would really be quote-unquote worried about is, like Green Bay, the quarterback could get hot. Matt Stafford, look, the Rams are very inconsistent this year, and they're not who you think they are on paper. They won 3 of their last 4 games, scoring less than 20 points. But Matt Stafford still has those games where he can catch fire. I look back to that matchup against the Buffalo Bills in December where he outdueled Josh Allen in a 40-point shootout. And Josh Allen had, 6-7 touchdowns in that matchup. So Matt Stafford can still get hot. It's fewer and far between than it's been in years past. But that's the only thing that I look at the Rams and say, that's what could beat the Eagles if the Eagles don't beat themselves. What can the Rams do that overpowers the Eagles? I think it's potentially Matt Stafford outplaying Jalen Hurts if he gets hot, if he starts picking on whoever's in place for Nakobe Dean now that he's out for the year, a Jeremiah Trotter Jr., an Oren Burks. If they can exploit that matchup and Stafford gets hot, that's the only way I think the Rams do something that beats the Eagles if the Eagles aren't beating themselves. Because although that's not all the Rams have, like I said, I love their defensive line. Jared Verse, Brendan Fisk, Kobe Turner, Byron Young. They have 4 extremely underrated first or second year defensive linemen that all had, over 7 sacks? I mean, Fisk had 8.5, so did Kobe Turner. Jared Verse had, I believe, over 7. Don't quote me on that. So did Byron Young. They all dominated this year. They have 2 really good receivers in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Sean McVay, again, like I said, he's one of the best play callers, one of the best head coaches in the NFL. But why I'm so confident in those matchups with the Eagles is that everything the Rams do best, like I said, the defensive line, receivers, play calling, the Eagles have an elite counter to attack that. The Rams' pass rush is really good, right? Well, guess what the Eagles have? the best offensive line in football. They have the 2 best island tackles in the league, where Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, they don't need any help, and they're going to completely erase you. Yeah, the Rams have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. You know what the Eagles have to counter that? The best trio of corners in football: Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and Darius Slay. Sean McVay is one of the best play callers in football. Like, that's a fact. You know what the Eagles have? Kind of the antidote to that style of offense, a Shanahan-McVay type of offense. Vic Fangio has had their number for years now. This year especially, I think he really shut down Sean McVay's offense on Sunday Night Football. So, again, the Rams do a lot of things really well. And the hot team in football entering the playoffs, that's a scary team you normally don't want to play. Like, the Packers, not this year, but last year, were kind of what LA is right now. Green Bay entered the playoffs red hot. They upset the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round as the 7 seed, and they nearly beat the 49ers on the road in the divisional round to get to the NFC Championship. So the Rams are one of the hottest teams in football right now. Their defense looks really good. They do have Matt Stafford and Sean McVay and 2 good receivers. Like, they have a lot going for them, but I honestly am not really scared. I think the Eagles match up so well. They're a much more physical football team than LA. It's strength. The Rams don't really have a mismatch they can exploit. It's normally strength on strength with whatever they have that's good on that team. And their offense is just extremely inconsistent. Again, as much as Stafford is someone I respect, him and McVay, and I think they could attack. I'm a little bit nervous about that matchup with whoever's the backup linebacker starting in place of Nakobe Dean. Again, the last 4 games of the year, the Rams won 3 of those games, but they scored under 20 points. So I just don't think, again, yes, Stafford could still have that Bills-like performance in him, and it's the only thing I'm watching closely, but I don't know if he can do that against the Eagles' number 1 defense. Like, the Eagles' defense is a lot better than Buffalo's, and I just can't imagine the secondary getting torched. Could I imagine Stafford having more success than Jordan Love? Yeah, absolutely. But could I see him lighting up this defense, even with a backup linebacker in on Sunday? No, absolutely not. So I'm not worried. Their run defense is not physical. Their run game is not explosive. They're in a lot of 3rd and long situations, and the Eagles are very good in those situations on defense. And I look at Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to bounce back this week. He would have diced up LA in that first game if he was allowed to throw it more than he did. I thought even though the numbers look not that impressive against the Rams last time, Jalen had a lot of success throwing the football, especially to A.J. Brown over the middle of the field. I thought that was one of Jalen's most efficient games, but Saquon Barkley had over 300 yards from scrimmage and had a historic performance. So yeah, they were going to lean into that. But if they let Jalen to continue throwing the football like he did last year against the Rams, he would have had a dominant performance. The Rams do not run a lot of cover 2. Jalen, I think, is a lot better when they're single high safeties. I think they can take some chances deep. I don't want to sound too overly confident, but last week I was a little more hesitant against Green Bay. Like, that was a matchup that made me a little nervous, and I was wondering how Jalen was going to look, and he looked rusty. But this week now, got another week to get him ready to go. I think I like the matchup. I think the Eagles match up really well with this Rams team. A.J. Brown, another week healthier. He was off today from practice, just resting up. I'm feeling pretty good about this game. And the Eagles, by the way, they are historically good in the divisional round. So the Eagles all-time, at the Link specifically, the Eagles all-time at Lincoln Financial Field in the divisional round, this is the best in NFL history. They are 6-0. They average 25 points per game. They average only 11.7 points per game allowed. Total yards per game in these 6 matchups, 355.2. That is the best in NFL history at 6-0. The Eagles at the Link in the divisional round, knock on wood, they don't lose these games. So could the Rams keep it close? Absolutely. I like LA. I picked them to make the playoffs in the summer. I think when you have a quarterback like Matt Stafford and a play caller like Sean McVay, you're always going to be, a floor of success is going to be there. Like, you're going to have success. But the Eagles are just on another level, I think, right now than LA. I just don't think they can hang with them for 4 quarters. They might keep it close, but if the Eagles aren't turning the ball over and just looking sluggish like they have at times, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot and get these so damn annoying holding penalties in the red zone and Jake Elliott's making kicks, Jalen Hurts isn't throwing picks, I'm sorry. I don't see how the Rams beat them. I'm not trying to look too ahead to the NFC Championship, but I can feel Detroit. Like, I feel like it's destiny in the NFL this year that it's Eagles-Lions. And again, I really hope I don't look back at this in a few days and look like an idiot, but I don't think I'm going to. Like, I like this matchup. I would have rather had the Vikings, but overall, the Eagles match up well with the Rams, as we saw in that first game. And either way, I was like, it's tomato, tomato. I don't really think the Vikings and Rams are all that different. So I'm feeling good about this game for sure. And I think the Eagles need to trust Jalen Hurts in this matchup. I want to get into that coming up next, right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team like the Eagles, money line straight up over the Rams, or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. For me, what I'm going to do Sunday, I'm going to actually hammer the over on Jalen Hurts' passing yards. I think he's going to have some success against LA. I'm going to take the Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown at FanDuel. They got you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Eagles-Rams this Sunday in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs at Lincoln Financial Field. Kickoff at a strange but pretty normal for the playoffs, 3 p.m. Just feels weird. And then, of course, followed up is a barn burner, Lamar Jackson against Josh Allen. The playoffs get better and better every week, and I think this week's games are going to be a lot better than last week. Last week was terrible. Outside of the Eagles game and then the Commanders-Bucks, there really wasn't a close matchup. Rams-Vikings was a blowout, boring. Same with Texans-Chargers, Ravens-Steelers, Bills-Broncos. The wild card round was pretty lackluster. I think this week you're going to get better matchups between, Bills-Ravens is great. I think Jaden Daniels is going to keep up with the Lions. I don't think Washington's going to win. Could you imagine, though, an Eagles-Commanders NFC title? That'd be nuts. But I think that'll be a good game. Eagles-Rams will be good. I think it'll be a lot better. Chiefs-Texans, I hope, is good. I think just this week has more potential to have close games. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Eagles handle the Rams pretty handily. Like, I think if that same game plays out from Sunday Night Football in November, would that shock me? No. And I went back and watched some of that tape earlier today just to see, kind of like last week against Green Bay, both playoff games, the Eagles have, I think, the luxury, the advantage of already beating those teams. They can go back and evaluate, okay, what should we keep from that game plan? What should we do different? I went back and did the same thing. Here is what I came up with, some lessons from the first game against Los Angeles. Number one, just like that first win, I think you need to lean on Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley had the best game of his career against the Rams in November. 26 carries, 255 rushing yards. He had 47 receiving yards as well. Over 300 yards from scrimmage. 2 touchdowns, including a 70-yarder. I think the Eagles need to continue to lean into Saquon Barkley. Don't give in to the national narrative that you have to throw the ball 35-plus times to win this game. No. The Rams, although they have a good defensive line with Jared Verse, Brendan Fisk, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, it's a good defensive line at getting to the quarterback, but they're undersized. They're not nearly as physical as the Eagles' offensive line. They were 23rd this year in rushing total. Do what you did last time. Like, lean into Saquon Barkley and the run game, your offensive line on Sunday. Like, really don't give in. Like, even the Pittsburgh game, I love seeing them kind of shut up the country by having Jalen Hurts throw all over the Steelers, but I don't want them to do that again don't prove a point in the playoffs. And I don't think they will. I liked what Jalen Hurts said today when he was questioned about the passing game. He said, you guys don't get it. My role is going to change every week. I'm only going to play in the way I think it takes for us to win the football game. I don't care about anything else. And I truly believe that. I think that's a lesson they should take from that first game. absolutely lean into Saquon Barkley. Something else that I would do from that game, get A.J. Brown more involved, especially compared to last week, only 1 catch for 10 yards against Green Bay. He's banged up, but hopefully another week of rest can get him a little bit healthier for this divisional matchup. Use him over the middle of the field, right? And that kind of ties in with my number 4, my 4th lesson, which is the quick passing game. Get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands a lot faster than Sunday. The routes against the Packers took just far too long to develop. They were lazy, just not creative. Get A.J. Brown going, get him the ball fast over the middle of the field. He did that against the Rams. I thought A.J. had an incredible game in Los Angeles. Number 11 needs to be a lot more involved. Even with Saquon Barkley being the focal point, you got to get A.J. Brown more than 1 catch if you want to win consistently. So I think that's another lesson that I took from that game. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown were cooking. Again, Brown had over 100 yards in that football game. Jalen's numbers were whatever. But if they went with a high passing volume attack in that game, I think they still would have dominated. So I think that's another lesson to take. Use A.J. Brown. Get him involved early. Use him over the middle of the field. The quick passing game, it needs to be there more than it was against the Packers. And then another lesson, and this is kind of the opposite of what they did against the Rams, take more deep shots. Trust in Jalen Hurts. Like, I really think they played way too conservative on Sunday. And yes, they are going to play it safer this year, passing the football, because Saquon Barkley and this defense are historically good right now. So they are not going to take as many risks as they have in years past. They are not going to throw the football 35 plus times, dial up all these deep shots. Jalen Hurts is not going to take some of the risks that he did last year or even earlier this year. They understand what they do best, and they are going to lean on that. And I think that is the right strategy. When you have a historic run game and the number 1 defense in football, you let them carry you. And I think Jalen Hurts taking on that game manager role, the offense, the coaching, telling him to play this way is smart. But last week, I thought they took it way too far, where they just weren't taking any sort of shots. And again, I understand it from the perspective of letting the run game and defense carry you, but you can't be doing this because you don't trust Jalen. Like, yeah, we know Jalen Hurts is who he is as a passer. He's going to be inconsistent year after year in the pocket. Like, he's not always going to throw it over the middle of the football field. Defenses know at times simulated pressure, different disguised looks, like they can get Jalen. He's never going to be a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen or a Pat Mahomes from a consistency perspective as a passer. But at the same time, last week they completely neutered the guy, where 3rd and 12, he's handing the ball off, or 3rd and long in the red zone, they're dialing up quarterback draws. Jalen Hurts isn't Joe Burrow or Josh Allen consistently as a passer, but he's also not, even a Sam Darnold. Like, he's not a Brock Purdy, a game manager that you can't trust, even a Jared Goff. Like, Jalen Hurts for the last 2 years has shown that with a high volume attack, he can be one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the league. Like, yeah, there might be times he throws an interception. There might be times that he's not as efficient in the pocket. He's not going to have the layer throws, the anticipation passes that some of the other elites will. But also, you're missing out on a lot of what Jalen does great when you don't let him pull the trigger. Like, he's one of the best deep ball passers in football. Outside of structure, he's been throwing on the run so well this year. Like, I think he has proven the last 2 years that he deserves to not have the handcuffs on him completely. I thought last week they went way too far. And I saw these stats actually about Jalen in high volume situations. So in games where he threw for 35 attempts or more, he was 11-2. 20-plus yard passes this year, he's only 24th in the league in those attempts. Like, they are not really letting him push the football down the field. And when defenses allow when the Eagles defense has allowed 30-plus points in a game, Jalen Hurts is 5-4. So this narrative that Jalen can't win when it's a shootout, when the defense is allowing 30-plus, when he's throwing for 35-plus, it's not true. Again, There's been an acceptance that I've had with Jalen. Like, I think he'll never be a top 5 pocket passer, but I think he can have top 5 moments, right? And when he's not having those moments, he can be who he's been this year, a really good game manager that has explosive plays as a runner, and he's not going to turn the football over. Like, I think that's the kind of guy that you can get, but you got to trust him more than last week, because in the playoffs, it's going to require Jalen Hurts to do more than he did on Sunday. So I just don't think, again, like, yes, you're going to play it safer. You're not going to take as many shots as you did last year. You're not going to throw it 30-plus times unless the game calls for it, right? You're just not going to do that because of the run game, how good it is. Saquon was incredible against Green Bay. The defense is absolutely incredible. You don't want to play too aggressive where you put those strengths in uncomfortable positions where they got to dig you out of a hole. But, I mean, 24th in the league this year in 20-plus yard passing attempts, I think that's a little bit too far. You have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert fully healthy. Jalen Hurts, when he has those guys healthy, is a pretty damn good passing quarterback. Like, yeah, when he doesn't have those guys, is he going to be Josh Allen this year where he's an MVP candidate with Khalil Shakir as his number 1? No, probably not. But that's not the reality of the Eagles situation. They have the weapons that he's had success with in the past. So I'm not saying now suddenly you need to throw 40-plus times to beat the Rams. No, like I said in my lessons, number 1, lean on Saquon Barkley. I want him to have at least 20 carries in this game, probably more, 22, 25. Like, let Saquon eat. But I'm not saying the attempts need to go up, but you got to let Jalen take some more shots and be aggressive when it calls for it. Because there were opportunities against the Packers to take shots, and were they perfectly open? No, but Jalen is look at his yards over expected this year stat. His completion percentage over expected. The improbable completions from next-gen stats. He was consistently atop the league this year in those situations throwing the ball down the field. You got to give him more opportunity. Like, they treated him last week like he was 2021 Jalen Hurts, like he was a rookie, like an Anthony Richardson. And that's just, I don't, as much as I have accepted who Jalen is and think he's worse at times a passer than other fans, he also is much better than what we saw on Sunday. And I think the matchup against the Rams is a good one for him to bounce back. I really do think a lot of that game also was rust. I think Jalen's going to look really good on Sunday. I'm feeling confident in this one, 100%. All right, guys, we'll wrap up Locked On Eagles coming up next. And this is an interesting question I got from one of our listeners on X. If the Eagles win the Super Bowl this year, who would they most remind you of past champions? Like, who has won a title doing it the way the 2024 Eagles would? We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decision for your business. It's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience, I was a sports director. LinkedIn Jobs helped me find the right fit for my company. Hire smarter this year. Find your great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they do apply. All right, so I was having a good discussion with one of our listeners on X the other day, and we were talking about how the Eagles play football, right? I mean, that's been the big discussion this year is, yeah, they're winning a lot of regular season games, running the football, leaning on their defense. Jalen Hurts making explosive plays in the passing game, but not turning the ball over, being safer, being 32nd in passing attempts. They really leaned in to the ground and pound, smash mouth, old style of football where they lean on the run game and defense wins championships, right? Like a lot of the old narratives, the old mantras of football, That's the 2024 Eagles. Can they win a championship, though, this way? That's been a huge question that we've talked a lot about on this podcast, and everybody in Philadelphia media, but also the national media has talked about as well. They've talked about it to death, where it's annoying at this point. But I was thinking about it from a different perspective this week after beating Green Bay, because they're close. If they beat the Rams like they should on Sunday, they're 2 wins away from a world championship. They're 1 win away from the NFC title. So we got to start talking about it. If they win a title, who would they remind you of most? Like, what recent team? Because a lot of teams won titles like this, in the 90s, like those Cowboys teams, and in the early 2000s, like the Broncos, of course, with TD, and the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of teams won championships off the back of run game and defense from, 1970 to 1960 all the way to, I would say, like before the 2010s. But what teams recently, has there been a team that's done it the way the Eagles are? Like, can they do that? Like, is it possible? Has someone done it before? And I was thinking about it, and no, most teams as I said yesterday, most teams that win a Super Bowl, it eventually is because their quarterback had to be special multiple times in the playoff run, normally in the NFC title, AFC title, and or the Super Bowl. So most teams, like, that's why you win. It's because of your quarterback. And, of course, if you have a great pass rush. But I do think there is a team that most resembles the 2024 Eagles that was a past Super Bowl champion, that if they win, I would say it was most like that year. And I would say it's actually, when it comes to like what recent team that won did it the way of the 2024 Eagles, I would say it's actually the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. Just think about it. The Seahawks that year, what did they have? One of the best young defenses in football. The Legion of Boom said, "We are here." Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, was Byron Maxwell the other corner? Yeah, or Brandon Browner might have been the starter in 2013. I can't remember which one of those two it was. Earl Thomas, like Bobby Wagner, a young Bobby Wagner, Cliff Averill up front. Like, that was a young, elite Seahawks defense. On offense, what do they do best? They leaned on their run game. Marshawn Lynch was the face of that offense. But you know what else they had? This one was a second-year quarterback. Jalen Hurts is in year 5. But a young quarterback that's similar to Jalen Hurts, was elite mobility-wise, elite deep ball-wise, but was a low-volume quarterback that really didn't use the middle of the field. He threw more on, I would say, look and throw. It wasn't really an anticipation guy. Russell Wilson. Like, I think the 2013 Seahawks is the most similar champion, that if you're thinking, can this 2024 Eagles do it this way? Who recently has done it? Yeah, you got to go back 11 years, but I would say it's the Seahawks. And it's not just them. Like, the 2015 Denver Broncos won a championship leaning on defense, and their passing game was terrible. It was C.J. Anderson running the football, and it was a historically good defense that won them a championship. Most of the other teams that won a title, including the Eagles, yeah, it was off of, throwing the football. But I do think it's possible. Like, there's going to be times Jalen Hurts has to be special. Russell Wilson was extremely special for a lot of moments in the 2013 playoff run. And I think Jalen will be, so I'm very confident it's going to happen. But yeah, at the same time, was Russell Wilson in the passing game what carried that team? No. It was Marshawn Lynch and the Legion of Boom. So it's definitely possible to win it this way. Does it happen a lot? No. Most of the time it's off the backs of your quarterback. But in the 2024 NFL, where the run game has kind of been revived and it's very up and down with even the contenders, how they look this year and how talented the Eagles are, yes, they can win it this way. I truly believe they can be like the 2013 Seahawks, because I don't think you're going to get last week's Jalen Hurts the rest of the way in the playoffs. That's not what you were getting in the regular season. Yes, it was low volume, but Jalen Hurts had some incredible games still. Like, he showed, and even in the games where, and I said this the other day, even in the games where he wasn't having the sexy stats, when he had to, when he needed to be clutch and be special, he was. Even in the games where his numbers weren't that impressive, like the Baltimore Ravens matchup, he was special at the end. The game against Carolina, he struggled for 3.5 quarters. He was special in the fourth quarter. Right? I think that's what you're going to get with Jalen Hurts. You kind of got that against the Packers. He was really great the first drive, started the game, the first 2 drives, 6 for 6 and a passing touchdown, but he was bad for the rest, right? But what happened when the Packers pulled within 1 score, back-to-back drives? What does Jalen Hurts do? Drives them down the field, they get points. And that put the game away. So I think the Eagles would be a lot like the 2013 Seahawks if they win it all, and I think they can do it this way. And I think they should lean into their identity against the Rams. I think it's going to take more when we get to Detroit and then the Super Bowl potentially. Then the conversation's different. Then they need more. But against the Rams, don't give into this pressure that the national media and the local Philadelphia media is kind of pressing you on with the passing game. Like, yes, Jalen's got to be trusted more. They should take more shots, be more aggressive, but let Saquon Barkley and the defense carry you in this game. I really think the Eagles match up well with Los Angeles. They're a more physical football team. And like I said, every strength the Rams have, the Eagles have a strength to counter it. And we'll get into that, the deeper X's and O's of the matchup tomorrow with the guys over at Locked On Rams. Got a show for you Friday as well. So stick with me right here on Locked On Eagles. Thanks for making us your first listen and watch each and every day, Monday through Friday. As always, we're going to sign off for the show at the end. As always, thanks for downloading, watching, listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.